So once we have understood how to calculate allelic and genotypic frequencies, now we move on to the next part of our topic, that is Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Now, Geoffrey H. Hardy was a mathematician of Cambridge University, and you have heard about R.C. Punnett when we studied the Punnett square in your fifth semester in Principles of Genetics. So he was a Mendelian genetics, and Hardy and Punnett used to often meet at this faculty club at the University of Cambridge. Now, there is a story behind how this Hardy-Weinberg equation equilibrium concept developed. So this is the picture of a typical Punnett square, where we have female having a capital A small a allele and a male having a capital A small a allele. And when we place it in a Punnett square, and to be clear, capital A is represented by P and small a is represented by Q. And when we place it in a Punnett square, so it's simply, you can see that we can have three categories of genotype from this simple cross. So we have a capital A, small a heterozygote, PQ. We have a small a homozygote, that is Q square. Again, we have a capital A homozygote, that is P square. And a small a capital A heterozygote, that is PQ. So we can say that the number of capital A homozygote 1 is to the number of capital A small a heterozygote 2 is to the number of small a homozygote 1. Or in otherwise, we can write it as P square is to 2PQ is to Q square. There is one more concept you should keep in mind, that P plus Q, while we're doing allelic frequency, is equal to 1. So the whole square, P square plus 2PQ plus Q square will also be equal to 1. Okay. Now this is something we have already grasped the idea when we studied the allelic and the genotypic frequency. Now coming back to the story. So it was in 1908 that Punnett one day told about a problem to Hardy. What was the problem? Let's see the problem. Now the problem was that this was a problem that was discussed by G.U. Yule, who was a critic to Mendelism. He said that the allele for short fingers, brachydactyly, was dominant to its allele for, was dominant to its allele for normal length fingers. So let us assume B is the allele for short finger, which is dominant to the allele small b for long finger. Let us assume what Yule tried to say to Punnett. So what he said to Punnett is that now if we put this simple cross in a checkerboard, in a Punnett square, so we have males contributing to capital B, small b allele. Remember that B is the allele for short fingers brachydactyly. So you will be having short fingers phenotypically, okay? And B is dominant to small b. Small b is the normal allele for the normal length fingers. And from the females, we are again getting capital B, small b. When we do this cross, it is assumed that we'll be having one homozygote, two heterozygote, and again one homozygote. Now, if we look at the genotype of this cross, you see capital B, they will be having short fingers. Capital B, small b, they will also have short fingers. Only the small b will have normal length fingers. So phenotypically, Yule said that if this is the way in which alleles are crossed, and this is how we deduce what the phenotype will be. So for every 4 individual in England, 3 will have short fingers and 1 will have normal length fingers. So that means that majority of the people of England or Britain will be having short fingers. It will be only a restricted few who will have normal length fingers. So this was the problem that Yule put to Punnett. Now Punnett was baffled. Indeed, if I draw this thing in this manner, just I showed you in checkerboard, it is evident that out of every 4 individuals, 3 people are having short fingers, but that is not the case in the natural population. So when he faced this question from Yule, which however later on Yule said that I did not ask this question. Anyway, when he faced this question from Yule, he went to discuss this with his mathematician friend Hardy. And it was then when Hardy was actually analyzing how to come to the conclusion, he said that given any particular frequency of allele for short fingers and the allele for, and the allele for normal fingers in a population, the relative number of people with short fingers and the people with normal fingers will stay the same generation after generation if no natural selection is favored. So he said that even though from the Punnett it is evident that every generation there will be increasing amount of people with short fingers, but that will not be the scenario. Given that certain conditions are maintained, and given that the initial frequency, allelic frequency for short fingers is low, then the number of people exhibiting short fingers will also be very low. So this is what he said, and then he deduced a mathematical derivation to establish this fact. It was that within a few weeks, a similar paper was published by Wilhelm Weinberg, who was a German physician of Stuttgart, who almost established the same relationship between the allele between the relationship between the genotypes and the phenotypes in a population. And this equation then came to be popularly known as the Hardy-Weinberg law. However, it should also be mentioned in here that in 1903, the American geneticist Castle of Harvard University was the first to recognize that there was a distinct relationship between allele and genotypic frequencies. Even though he recognized it, but it was Hardy and Weinberg who put it into pen and paper and clearly described the relationship in mathematical terms. So often the law is referred sometimes as Castle, Hardy, and Weinberg law. So now coming to the Hardy-Weinberg law. But when we talk about the Hardy-Weinberg law, the Hardy-Weinberg law is divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is assumption. Now, when we are assuming, we are establishing a mathematical law for a given population. Now, when we talk about population, it is residing in nature, and a population is governed by a lot of natural forces of nature. So when we are talking about Hardy-Weinberg law, we have to keep it in mind that there are some restrictions put on these natural forces. So see, there is assumption. So what did Hardy assume? Just a second, I lost my point. Contributions. So this in the assumption part, he said that the population should be infinitely large, randomly mating, that is panmictic. I'll come to that one by one. Free from mutation, migration, and natural selection. So at the very start, when we are thinking of considering Hardy-Weinberg equation for a given population, we have to keep it in mind that the population is large enough. It's not a small population. The population is randomly mating. I'll come to this random mating a bit later on. And it is a sort of isolated population in the sense that no individuals are moving out of the population or are moving into the population. There is no mutation occurring in the population. So the population is free from any incidence of mutation. And no natural selection is favoring any particular trait in that population. So natural selection is also not operative in that population. Given that these assumptions are done, then only the results of the alleles, the frequencies of the alleles at which they initially fix do not change over time. So if there is a frequency of allele which is very low, then it remains constant. It is fixed at that low frequency generation after generation. And the genotypic frequencies remain in the proportion p square 2pq. Just a second, somebody's not muted. And the genotypic frequencies remain the proportion p square 2pq and q square. So this is one thing, and the sum of the genotype will be of the frequency will equal to 1, that is p square plus 2pq plus q square is equal to 1. So in other words, this population does not change or evolve with respect to the locus being examined. Very important. So there is a particular allele I'm looking onto, a particular locus I'm looking into it, and the population does not change or evolve with respect to the locus. And again, as I said, all the individuals of all genotype have equal rates of survival and equal reproductive success. There is no selection. No new alleles are created or converted from one allele into another by mutation. Individuals do not migrate into or out of the population. The population is finitely large, and individuals in the population mate randomly. So when these assumptions are kept constant, these assumptions are maintained, the frequency with which an allele is fixed in a population does not change over time, and the allele frequency remains constant through time. So does the genotypic frequency remains constant through time. Now talking about random mating, I just wanted to show you, just imagine that in the pocket, suppose there is a bucket of eggs. And in this bucket of eggs, you have one egg bearing capital T and one egg bearing small t. And you have a bucket of sperm. In that bucket, you have a capital T bearing sperm and a small t bearing sperm. So a bucket of eggs is, you are having a bucket of egg and a bucket of sperm. The eggs do not know any of the sperm. The sperms do not know any of the eggs. Each egg is equally fit to meet another sperm. So there is no choice between the meeting of an egg and a sperm. Now, when I take these two buckets separately and imagine I put them into another bucket, pour the whole solvent of egg in and the whole solvent of sperm in a third bucket, and I mix it, and assuming that every time an egg meets a sperm, there is a zygote formed. So this meeting is random because none of the egg can choose over any sperm. The moment it meets a sperm, a zygote is formed. So there is no mate choice. So that is the concept of random mating. And now what I give you the concept is a random mating at the molecular level. At the molecular level, when you mix a bucket of egg with a sperm, there is no choice between the egg and the sperm. So at the molecular level, this is basically the concept of random mating. So whenever a capital T egg meets a capital T sperm, we get TT homozygotes. Whenever a capital T egg, so a T egg meets a T sperm, a T egg meets a small t sperm. So what we get, capital T small t heterozygote, a zygote. Whenever a capital T sperm meets a small t egg, we get a capital T sperm and a small t heterozygote. And whenever a small t sperm and a small t egg meet each other, so when they meet, we get a small t homozygote. So this is the concept of random mating. And in terms of P and Q, by now you have understood capital T will be P square, capital T egg and small t sperm PQ, capital T sperm and small t egg PQ. Since phenotypically these are same, so it's 2PQ, and a capital T small egg and a capital T, a small t egg and a small t sperm, when will meet, will produce the Q square homozygote. So when we are thorough with the concept of random mating, so just for recapitulation, so in absence of any changes, any evolutionary changes, As I said, the Hardy equation predicts an equilibrium that is unchanging allele and genotypic frequencies from generation to generation. Note in mind, no new mutations, the conditions. The population is finitely large, no migration, no natural selection, random mating or breeding. Now let's see how this happens. Mathematically, now let's deduce that. So this is something you know. We have male gametes, capital A, small a, and we have female gametes, capital A, small a. Capital A at the outset, capital A is dominant to small a, let us assume, and capital A is equal to P, small a is equal to Q. So keeping these three things in mind, we are getting P square, PQ, that's 2PQ, and Q square. That is first generation. So the gametes were P, Q, this capital A, small a, and again the gametes were for the male and the gametes were capital A, small a for the female. So this is our first generation. So let us look at our first generation. So it's P square plus 2PQ plus Q square. Now we have three categories of individuals. Now let's go another generation ahead. Now, males are of three categories in the population. Capital A, capital A, capital A, small a, small a, small a. Females are also of three categories in the population. And females in the population again are of three categories. So we can have capital A, capital A, small a, and small a, small a. From this equation, we understood that we can write this capital A as P square, as 2PQ, as Q square. Similarly, we have written here as P square, 2PQ, Q square. Now, as I said, we are moving on. So this was the first generation. We are moving on to the second generation to show you that the frequencies remain constant if the Hardy-Weinberg conditions are maintained. So we are mating them. So by mating them, we are just multiplying their frequencies. So when we mate this capital A female with a capital A male, we get P4. We are mating P square into P square, P4. When we are mating a capital A small a female with a capital A, sorry, first let's finish this row. So we have done this, with this mating is done. Now we are mating capital A female with a capital A small a male. We are getting, see, multiply it, 2P cube Q. Similarly, when you are mating capital A female with a small a male, we are getting P square into Q square, P square. So this is how all the individuals have mated with each other. And we have got in the process 9 genotypes. So you can see this is how every individual has been mated with each other. And we have got 9 genotypes from 1, 2, 3 for this capital A female with the 3 categories of male. 4, 5, 6 for the capital A small a female with the 3 categories of male, and 7, 8, 9 for the small a female with the 3 categories of male. So we have got something like this. Now let's reorganize this data into a table. So now when we reorganize the data into the table, remember we have only 3 categories of genotypes, whatever might be the number of individuals present. But we started with 3 categories of genotypes, capital A, capital A, small a, small a, small a. So the second generation will also have 3 categories of genotypes, capital A, small a, capital A, small a, and small a, small a. Now these were our meetings. So now let's see how we organize these meetings. So we are putting capital A, that was 1. So the genotype will be AA. Okay. So that is totally capital A, capital A. Now we are making capital A into capital A, small a. If you do a cross like this separately, you will get capital A homozygotes 50%, and you will get capital A, small a homozygotes 50%. So they will be in the ratio 1:1 if you made this separately. So when we do this category of mating, we are getting capital A homozygotes 50%, capital A, small a homozygotes again 50%. So they are in the ratio 1:1. When we do this category of mating, capital A, consider each mating as a separate entity. When we are doing this category of mating, capital A into small a, you will understand that this mating will result in all of the individuals having a genotype capital A, small a. So all of them are capital A, small a. Next, when we are having this category of mating, this is the typical Mendelian monohybrid cross, we will have 3 categories of genotypes from this mating. 1/4 will be capital A, 2/4 will be capital A, small a, and again 1/4 will be small a, smaller. So they'll be in the ratio 1:2:1. So 1:2:1. When we are mating capital A, small a into small a, small a, again, if you do this mating, you will realize that you will be getting 50% of heterozygotes and 50% of smaller homozygotes. So their ratio will be also 1:1. So this will be smaller. Sorry, this is an error. This will be smaller. There will be smaller here. And finally, when we mate smaller individuals with smaller individuals, all the individuals will be smaller. So when we do a cross like this, we are getting 6 categories of mating and 9 categories of individuals. So when we have understood that the 6 crosses are producing 9 category of genotypic frequencies, so this is what the cross we started with, and now this is what we did. I explained you how these matings are done and what is the ratio in which they are produced. So this was the mating frequency. For the first category, all are P4. For the second category, for this mating, the 2 genotypes will be produced in the ratio 1:1. So we have the total, we got 4 P3Q. So we'll have 1:1 ratio for both of them. For the third category, the mating frequency was 2p²q², and all the genotypes will exhibit capital A, small a. For the fourth category, the mating frequency was the capital A, small a into capital A, small a, and we'll observe the genotypes in the ratio 1:2:1. So this was the mating frequency, and we have observed the ratio genotypes in the ratio 1:2:1. This was the fifth mating category, and the mating frequency was this. Here also, the 2 genotypes will be produced in the ratio 1:1. So we'll be having 2 PQ3 of the heterozygote, and this will be again, sorry, this will be small a, and we'll have 2 PQ3 for the recessive homozygote. And finally, this is the final mating category, all exhibiting P4, and we'll be seeing, so this will not be P4, sorry. So this will be Q4, and this will also be, this will be Q4. So in terms of P and Q, for the capital A, this is the genotypic frequency of the population. For the capital A, small a, this is the genotypic frequency of the population now. And for the small a part, this is the genotypic frequency of the population. So with this genotypic frequency, now let's see, can we match them with the initial genotypic frequency of P² plus 2PQ plus Q²? So let's see that. So now I have come So this is from Russell I genetics. So as I showed you, for capital A, this is now the genotypic frequency. For capital A, small a, this is now the genotypic frequency. For small a, this is now the genotypic frequency. Now, if you add up the mating frequencies, this is nothing but the formula of p square plus 2pq plus q square whole square is equal to 1. So it's proved that p square plus 2pq plus q square is equal to 1. When we add up this genotypic frequencies, again, simply take out p square, you are getting this value, p square plus 2pq plus q square, we know that is 1. So the capital A is actually nothing but p square. When we are adding up these genotypic frequencies, add up 2pq, take out 2pq, we are again having p square plus 2pq plus q square. So the genotypic frequency for this is 2pq. And finally, when we are talking about small a, this is the genotypic frequencies for the small a. When we add up them, take out q square, again we are having 1. So this is the genotypic frequency of q square. So when we started with our first generation, the original genotypic frequency of capital A was p square. The genotypic frequency of capital A was 2pq, and the genotypic frequency of small a was q square. And after second generation of mating, we are getting a capital A p square. We are getting a capital A 2pq, and we are getting a small a q square. So you can see thus that the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is established. So this is how, this is for second generation, the deduction has been done. You go on continuing, you'll always come back, keeping those factors, assumptions constant, you'll always come back to capital A having the genotype p square, capital A small a having the genotype 2pq, and small a having the genotype q square. So now when we have understood that how the genotypic frequencies remain constant over generation, we did the example of a second generation. Now let's get into problems related to Hardy-Weinberg. Since you people have done the calculations related to allelic and genotypic frequencies, so this is an example given here that we have LM individuals 406, LN individuals 744, and LN individuals 322. The first part is something you already know, to calculate the allelic frequencies. And the second part is to state whether the population is Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So I'll give you 5 minutes. Find out the allelic frequency of LM and LN first. So you people have solved it by yourself. So most of you have done it right. So this is how you did it. This will be 0.53. This will be 0.53 and this is 0.47. So the first part was perfectly right. Now, the second part, how do we understand that this population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium or not? Or is it following Hardy-Weinberg equation or not? Now, the problem says the state whether the population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So while calculating our allelic frequencies, many of you must have used the formula for genotypic frequency for calculation of allelic frequencies, which states that p square plus half of 2pq for calculating the frequency of p, and for calculating the frequency of q, we use a formula q square plus half of 2pq. So this is the initial genotypic frequency. So this is the initial p square. This is the initial 2pq. And this is your initial q square. So this is, while doing the genotypic frequencies, you calculated the initial p square, 2pq, q square. Now, this is your p. So from the problem, this is your p, which you obtain from the initial p square to pq q square, and this is your q, which again you obtain from the initial p square to pq q square. So if you remember, the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium states that keeping those assumptions constant, the frequency of P and Q, and thus the frequency of P square, 2P and Q square will not change generation after generation. So let's see if there is any change. With this fresh P, I calculated the genotypic frequency again. So using this P, I calculated P square is equal to, so I got a value of around 0.27. With this P and this Q, I now calculated the 2PQ, which is 0.5. And again with this Q, I calculated the Q square, which is 0.22. So this is our new P square. This is our new 2PQ. And this is our new Q square. And we got these values from this P and this Q. This P and this Q gave us these values, right? And if you now match the genotypic frequencies of the next generation with the genotypic frequencies of the parents, you can see they are exactly similar. So it proves that since the P square of the parents is matching the P square of the F1, the 2PQ of the parents is matching the 2PQ of the F1, and the Q square of the parents is matching the Q square of the F1. Hence, the population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So this is how we can deduce whether a population is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium or not.